reaction to the letter from the Justice Department that they walked away from the Trentadue matter?
Well, I've been somewhat surprised by it, both surprised and unsurprised. The fact is that they have not found any criminal liability here. On the other hand, they can't explain the tremendous inconsistencies of what happened in this particular instance. So I'm very concerned about it.
But there were many aspects to PATCON. They had the aspect that John Matthews was with, which was to infiltrate and incite these groups to violence.
They're seeing now the devastation that was caused by these people who manufactured this bomb to do this type of devastation in this country. It's unheard of.
He oversaw the grand jury that supposedly investigated my brother's murder, and then after that grand jury comes back, no bill, mean no cause of action, no murder.
That not only are these facts suspicious, but it looks as though somebody in the Bureau of Prisons or having relationship with the Bureau of Prisons murdered the man.
It's not a fair fight, but if they wanted a fair fight, they should have killed somebody else's brother.
All right, we're joined again by Jesse Trentadue, and we're continuing the story of really, I'm going to just call it Jesse's war, because Jesse, you have been battling for 30 years now.
Over 30 years.
Yeah, literally this year marked the 30-year anniversary of Oklahoma City, your brother's death, and it's so unbelievable how long and how hard you've had to fight. And this is through multiple administrations and the government even.
Yes, and you would think that with the change of administrations, like he was murdered under the Clinton administration, that there would be a lessening of resistance preceding or following administrations, but it's not true. They fight just as hard, as evident by the fact that I have a letter. There's a letter from me on Attorney General Bondi's desk asking her to do two things: unseal the deposition of John Matthews, where he testifies about PATCON and the horrible things the government of the United States did as part of PATCON, and to release to me the videotape, the surveillance videotape showing the people who actually blew up the federal building. I mean, they have a tape that shows the truck being driven up, the people getting out, the truck exploding, and they won't turn it over. And they won't unseal Matthews' deposition.
Now, this is John Matthews, who is a FBI informant who worked with them underground to infiltrate different white supremacist groups.
They were targeting the political right, militia groups. And yes, some were Klan, some were neo-Nazis, but no, PATCON is, for your audience, it's an acronym for Patriot Conspiracy. It was a squirrel brain operation the Department of Justice and the FBI put in place in the 1990s. I think it's still going on. It's been going on since then. But there were many aspects to PATCON. They had the aspect that John Matthews was with, which was to infiltrate and incite these groups to violence. They had another wing where it was actually to infiltrate and commit the crime, like gun running. That they did in Arizona, automatic weapons. And then it had another aspect, which was to infiltrate, monitor, and control. And they had informants on the staffs of federal judges. They had informants at the highest level of the media. I mean, not just the guy behind the camera, but the man who's behind the desk on the top floor of ABC was one of their informants. They have informants in the White House. They had informants on the staffs of congressmen and senators. Now, and our federal judges, I can see there could be an instance where you would want, as part of an investigation, an informant in the federal judge's office. For example, if you thought he was corrupt or she was corrupt and they were accepting bribes, you might place an informant to investigate.
But that's an active investigation,
Right.
not just not wandering around saying, hey, let's just put people here and hoover up whatever we can come up with.
They're spying. That's all they're doing now. With these type of operations, spying.
Now, you brought up a good point, and I want to circle back to it when you said right wing, and the key word is that patriot. And patriot tickles my brain a little bit when I hear it, because that is a particular word that some people target and they automatically associate. Are you familiar with Laura? I think it's Laura Lerner, a former IRS head, who was flagging organizations and auditing them, etc. And one of the keywords they would use to choose which organizations or nonprofits they wanted to hit was if the word patriot was involved. I don't know if you heard anything about
I
that.
remember vaguely stuff about that, but it makes sense. That would be a PATCON type operation, focus on who you perceive as your enemy. And they're long running. I mean, they were in it for the long game, the FBI and Department of Justice.
Okay. Now, also, one other point is, you correct me. I said white supremacist because that is the narrative that is put out quite a bit. And we'll get into it, like SPLC, but not everybody technically involved is racist. For example, while David Koresh, I'm not saying he's a good guy. And by the way, a lot of these people are not good people that are in the mix. While he was in a quote unquote cult, etc., they had mixed relationships and stuff like that, and were definitely not, Nazis, so to speak, and didn't have, dare I say, right-wing any bigotry like white supremacist natures. It's just they happen to be against the government. These other people were against the government, and so they sort of the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing.
Yes, and
Would that be fair?
you had a good point there, that the part of PATCON was targeting these religious communities. At the same time, and John Matthews, and I guess we'll tie in John Matthews a little later, but he said at the same time that Waco was going on, they had a plan to hit another community in Benton, Tennessee, fundamentalist religious, anti-government, and that he took in, smuggled into the compound an Army demolitions guy to assess the concrete bunkers, or what it would take to blow them. And those are where the women and children were going to be hiding when they assaulted the compound. And he said they were in the planes ready to go. And then Waco went south on them. They called the operation off.
The FBI's standoff with the Branch Davidians ended over 20 years ago. So why do these images continue to hold so much power today?
I'll be honest, we saw what happened at Waco.
I think you have to worry about Waco when people start showing up with guns and saying they're willing to take on the federal government.
So they didn't, as you pointed out, they didn't just go out for the Klan, neo-Nazis. It was anybody they perceived as being anti-government.
Okay. And part of the reason why I feel personally that there's a through line, and it doesn't seem to matter who is president at the time, is because the people involved are all lifers, dare I say, quote, deep state. And when people refer to the term deep state, you're talking about the bureaucracy, which is entrenched, which people have entire careers, 30 years, 40 years inside these departments. They are there from one administration to another administration to another administration. And the corruption you are tackling, I would argue, is within the culture of the three-letter agencies themselves. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, and it's a funny story there. My friend Roger Charles is deceased, but we were talking, and then Roger said there are three political parties in the United States. And I said, no, they're not, Roger. He said, yes, there is. I said, there's not. He said, there is. I said, what are the parties? He said, you have your Republicans, you have the Democrats, and you have the Permanent Party. And the Permanent Party are the people who run the agencies just below. They're not appointed. They're not removed. They stay in that position, administration after administration after administration. He said, those are the people who run the government, and those are the people who keep the lid on ugly secrets like PATCON, because they see the big picture. They have the institutional knowledge of where the bodies are hidden, and they monitor it and control it through administration after administration after administration. And damn if he's not right. That's exactly, as you said, that's who runs it.
All right. And you kind of fell into this investigation because you were seeking the truth of what happened with your brother. You pretty much got shut down. You did get a settlement, but nobody was ever arrested for the crime. And if everything, it just was completely covered up. Can we pivot now to where you decided, or what made you decide to say, you know what, I am going to go after using FOIAs to find out what the hell is actually going on? Why was I stymied?
Yeah, but in just one correction, they didn't settle with us. We took
I'm
that
sorry,
from
they
them
lost.
in the verdict, the jury, in the trial. The problem I had, and this was from the day my brother was murdered until that verdict came in, I didn't have a motive. My brother was beat to pieces, throat cut, and Janet Reno says, well, he hanged himself. And I said, look, you've had your head smashed in 3 places. There's not one square inch of your body doesn't have a bruise on it, and your throat's been cut, and you tell me it's a suicidal hanging? So I had no motive. And so people would always say, why would the government do it? I couldn't explain it. But we have to start in about 4 months after he was dead, and this one phone call started it, but I didn't put everything together then. I had received a phone call about December of 95 or January of 1996. This is before caller ID. It's an anonymous call. The caller said, I want you to know that your brother was killed by the FBI. It was an interrogation that went wrong. They thought he was a member of a bank robbery gang that was robbing banks to fund attacks against the federal government. Well, I would get calls like that all the time, and I took every one of them because while they may be mostly nuts, you never know if you're going to have somebody that's going to have some information for you. So I just filed it away in the back of my mind. Again, it was an anonymous call, no caller ID. And then in June or July of 96, I read a story in the LA Times about a fellow named Richard Lee Guthrie, who supposedly had hanged himself. He was a member of a gang of bank robbers called the Aryan Republican Army, or ARA, and they robbed banks with Tim McVeigh. And they said he had hanged himself in federal custody the day before he had promised to give the Los Angeles Times what he said was a tell-all interview that would blow the lid off the Oklahoma City bombing.
Now, what drew you to that story, or is it just in general, like, boy, this seems like a wild story?
Well, I think it was on the front page or something like that. It was, I looked at it, and when we moved from Appalachia, I used to get into reading the LA Times, and I said, it's so much easier than the New York Times. The print's bigger and the words are smaller. So
hey, it works.
So I was looking, I saw that story, and then that August of 1996, an FBI agent and a Department of Justice attorney from Main Justice fly all the way out from Washington, D.C. to talk to me in Salt Lake. And they wanted to know about my brother and what evidence we had. And so I'm telling them, and I related that story to them. And I still remember the look on their face when I said it. It was like, oh shit. Like they stopped writing. And the story about Guthrie and about the phone call in December. And because years later, I filed a FOIA request for those notes and reports of their interview with me. They claim they never made any. I know it's a lie. I sit there and watch them, write it down. But anyway, that gets me through the trial. And that was in 2000. We win. The judge gives us $1 million, not because my brother had been murdered. They couldn't prove that. They destroyed so much evidence, but just because of what they'd done to us, by trying to indict me, the harassment, just torturing us. And then I get a phone call I get a message from Tim McVeigh just before he was executed. And he said, I want you to know that when I saw your brother's picture and looked at his injuries, I believe the FBI killed him because they thought he was Richard Lee Guthrie.
Oh, I want to put some pieces together that people may not realize. Like, one, that story that you saw of Richard Lee Guthrie, it did have a picture of him, but that picture was very different. It was from several years prior, I think around the Navy or something. And he didn't look like he did at the time he was killed. And I think that might not have registered with you at the time.
That's probably true. That's probably true. It's been minutes. That was over 30 years.
That. And I'm assuming that it stood out too because he died in prison with the same situation as your brother. So it's probably like, wait, oh, here's another federal prisoner who hanged himself. That's weird. And I'm sure that's why you brought it up to the federal agents saying, yeah, you got this other guy here I just read about who hanged himself, and that might have triggered him. I'm sorry I just wanted to wrap up some observations in there.
That's good. I mean, but the important thing is I watched them take those notes. And as you know, every time they do an interview like that, they prepare a report called 302. When an FBI agent goes to the bathroom, has a bowel movement, he writes a 302 about the event. And so when I sued to get those reports and they said they didn't have any, the judge didn't believe him. He said, I don't believe you for 1 minute. He said, you write a 302 from the time you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night. But back
by the way, on that approach, I don't know if we're relitigating something that's already over and you can't do anything with, but there would be travel records that they came to see you, and they would have to account that they were with you X number of time. So it would be one of those stupid or liar questions in terms of, so you spent this many hours with the individual and you never wrote anything down, which means you were not doing your job because your job is to record everything you do, or you did in fact write it all down and you're hiding the fact. So it seems like there's a catch in there that could be put on them.
That's true, but they don't deny they came to see me. They just say, well, there was nothing of any consequence there for us to write down. And the reason I asked for those notes later is to verify the fact that I had told them this story in 1996. It's not something I pulled out of my ass last week about the phone call in Guthrie. But where it all came together then was in 2003, and Kathy Sanders will verify this. I didn't know she was on the other end of the call. It was in 2003 after McVeigh had been executed. And I still, I had McVeigh saying Guthrie, I'd seen Guthrie. I couldn't understand how it fit in with my brother, or possibly fit in with my brother. And I get a phone call, and the fellow says, hi. I said, yeah, who are you? And he said, I'm J.D. Cash. I'm a reporter from Oklahoma. And well, Kathy was in the room with her. So they were on speakerphone. I didn't know that. And he said, can I talk to you? I said, sure. He says, are you Kenneth Trentadue's brother? I said, I am. He said, let me ask some questions about your brother. He said, how tall was he? I said, he's about 5'8", 5'9". I said, what kind of body build did he have? I said, he was a powerfully built man. He said, the complexion? I said, he's dark complected. He said, where was he at the time he was arrested? I said, he was driving back across the border in San Diego from having visited his wife. She's an American citizen, but Hispanic family in Mexico. And he said, what kind of vehicle was he in? I said, he had a 1985, 86 Chevrolet pickup, I believe, a brown one. And he said, do you have any tattoos? I go, Yeah. He said, where? I said, he had a dragon tattoo on his left forearm. JD said, you better sit down. I said, I am sitting down. He said, let me tell you this. He said, the largest manhunt in the history of this country was taking place at the time your brother was arrested. There was a $2 million reward for John Doe 2. White male, 5'8", 5'9", dark complected, powerful upper body build, believed to be in Canada or Mexico, driving brown mid-1980s Chevrolet pickup truck, dragon tattoo, left forearm. Boom. Then I knew that was a connection. And that was when I had been leaked, and I came into contact then through JD with Roger Charles, my wonderful friend.
And not just a friend, Roger Charles is a fellow Marine who I believe did work for the Pentagon in journalism, moved on to ABC News, where he was putting a special together for the Oklahoma City bombing for 2020. And they essentially let one piece go out, which did get produced, but the entire piece he had, which I believe was a full hour, got spiked. He brought up questions of that, was angry, went on to Imus's radio show the following day saying, hey, they buried this stuff. I'm trying to find that interview right now. And he was in turn fired from ABC News and moved on to be an investigator for Stephen Jones. Is that cover a lot of his background?
It does. He teamed up with J.D. Cash, and they did some great work. He was a fellow Marine like myself, fellow hillbilly, from Mingo County, West Virginia. I'm from McDowell County. They're right together. He was one of those.
He's a McCoy.
Low life McCoys, though. My family McCoys. I used to laugh at when 80 years ago when we were born, they were still shooting each other. So, but he ended up being he's a wonderful man. I loved him dearly. But we went to these FOIA wars. Was me in the courtroom, Roger, and strategizing on how we fight them. And so we had been leaked 2 memos that indicated that the FBI had, everybody had an informant in a place called Elohim City. It's where the bomb plot originated, apparently. And that the Southern Poverty Law Center had it. The Secret Service had them there. The ATF had them there. The CIA had informants there. The FBI had them there. The only agency I can think of that didn't have an informant was the IRS.
Is when reports and newspapers go out and they say, there's a white supremacist extremist group in Oklahoma like that, and you'll notice most of the reports will say there's a compound, and if you look up the word compound, you'll find that this village, when you drove up here, doesn't qualify as a compound, does it? You didn't see big walls, and the neighbors do that keep the deer in down there, but we don't have that. But they put out those kind of stories about us, and it attracts people that might have other things in their heart and their mind.
But it's like you couldn't believe that they're there. But anyway, we filed this FOIA request for the documents linking informants to McVeigh and this group of bank robbers called the Aryan Republican Army.
Well, what year was that, or time frame? Is that 2003-ish? Or
it was early. It was about 2003, 2004. I filed so many of them. But this one, they come back, and I knew they'd come back and say, oh, we don't have any documents. And then I knew that Roger and I had planned it out. And if we said, here are 2, you're lying, then they'd say, well, those are false. And so we had a declaration already prepared under oath by an FBI agent retired out of the headquarters saying, these are legitimate. So it's true to form. They come back and tell the judge there are no documents. We throw down the 2, and then they say, well, no, those are fake. So he threw down the declaration. The judge says, go back and you bring me every document linking these informants to McVeigh and the ARA bombing.
And this is Judge Kimball, correct?
I think it was Kimball. And they come back and oldest document is April the 20th or 21st, 1995, 2 days after the bombing. And I go, whoa. You tell me you didn't have an informant there before the bombing, that everybody's there after the bombing? That doesn't make sense. But they say, hold our hand to God. That's judge. There's nothing before those dates. So they're lying, and they'll always lie. Even when the truth will serve them better. But
Now, who was it that was lying at the time? Was that FBI or DOJ? I want to keep track of my agencies.
the FBI, they have a
FBI.
whole. Most of the DOJ contains. Well, I'm sure there was DOJ oversight of the lies, but the DOJ doesn't have the records. The criminal investigations, all the investigations are the FBI's. So they have a whole unit called they call it the FOIA Records Information Center. I like to call it the FOIA Records Disinformation Center. They have a whole unit set up to respond to FOIA requests. And I found out they triage what they call FOIA requests that are going to be problematic, and those are mine. Those are the ones that go over in the corner, and you're not going to answer those. I mean, they screen them incredibly closely when they come through, decide, we're not going to go here, we're going to lie about it, we're not going to give them anything. But I discovered...
Do you feel special?
Huh?
Do you feel special?
I have. I told us I was one of the some bitches referred to me as Jesse bin Laden. He's one of these Department of Justice attorneys. And I said, that ain't fair. And he said, why? I said, because there's no way that sumbitch hates you more than I do. But that's the approach they've taken with me. They tried to indict me 3 times, I think, maybe more.
Well, you talked about a memory hole pattern. I think that's right about this time, right? When they started to produce documents, having their hands forced, that they were heavily redacted, or there was always problems with them. Can you describe that?
Yeah, you receive a document, it'd be a total blank page. Total blank page. And they would have a page number on the bottom. They say, page 11 of 25 or whatever, but blank. And they would play the national security card. Now, on a FOIA request, the government has to give you the records unless it falls in one of these protected classifications. And the one that is absolutely bulletproof is national security. They're supposed to play it honestly and say, and legitimately, that this involves national security. But they don't. They'll just declare everything national security. And a judge can't really look behind that designation. He has to accept their word for it. But what happened here, and this was a significant win, not just for me, but for the American people. The 10th Circuit Court of Appeals looked at those blank pages and said, hey, this won't work. They sent it back and they said, the judge, you have to produce every document unredacted. The judge will read them. He will uphold redactions, but only those portions that actually involve national security. So if the word national security appears in one sentence, that sentence is taken out, but everything else has to remain in. And that is a very big win, to have a judge actually look at what they've done and evaluate what their response is. And that hurt them bad. That's hurt them very, very badly. But they would do that, just blank out whole pages.
Now, from what I understand, though, when you got them back now, I think you and Roger Charles worked together on this, and between you had a mastery of figuring out character counts and things like that for redacted areas to say, okay, judging from this place, this time, this length, this period, this is this person. Is that something you were doing, or?
Yes. No? And Terry Nichols was helpful too. A lot of it came from Terry. We'd send Terry the documents and say, Terry, what are they saying here? Whose name is missing? And he could put it together for us. And he desperately, all these years, has wanted that story told. I mean, the story of the government's involvement in the bombing. I'm in a lawsuit now over 67,000 pages of FBI records linking their informant, Roger Moore, who provided McVeigh with the detonators for the bomb they used in Oklahoma City, linking him to that bomb plot. Now, they don't say, they said their number was 67,623 pages. I've been fighting for those records since 2016.
Can you tell me about Roger Moore and describe him, his past, this particular character who has since passed away?
He is a mysterious guy, and Nichols had a lot to say about him. During the Iran-Contra era in the late 1980s, he was a CIA operative down in Nicaragua. He then joined an FBI operation called Punch Out about 1990. And this was luring servicemen into selling military equipment to who they thought were foreign governments. He ran that operation for them. And then about 1992...
That sounds like PATCON. Sounds like PATCON.
It does sound like PATCON. I hadn't thought of it. You're absolutely right. And then about 1992, he hooks up, or 93, he hooks up with, or maybe it was 94, Tim McVeigh. And they become big buddies, and they're traveling the gun show circuit together all over the country. And Nichols...
Now, I'm to interrupt, and I apologize for that. From what I understand, around that time, ATF was doing a lot of work at gun shows and had informants at all over the place. Like every gun show, they had informants that were there, and they would just sit there, write down everybody's license plate, go collect that information, and boom, build lists.
Yes.
So I mean, please continue. I'm wondering if he's part of that.
I don't know, but anyway, they're tight. And then of course, Nichols says Moore gave McVeigh the kinetic. It takes a high energy explosive to detonate an Anthol bomb. Moore gave McVeigh the kinetic to blow up the federal building. And he said to him at the time, "I know you boys will put this to good use." And so, of course, Moore goes unscathed. And it's an interesting event that happens later when Nichols was convicted by a federal jury in Denver of the bombing. And this was a federal crime, for the federal crime. The jury gave him life in prison, but they wouldn't give him death because they said it's clear to us there were other people involved, and why in the hell isn't the government pursuing them? Why they just single this person out? So no, we're not going to put him to death because maybe someday he'll tell us who the other people are. And so then it became imperative that he die. So the government arranged for Nichols to be prosecuted in Oklahoma. And he's facing the death penalty in Oklahoma. Well, he was, and I verified this, and I'll
no double jeopardy concerns on that?
It's state crime now he's been prosecuted for. You can't be prosecuted twice for a federal crime or twice for a same state crime. But
it still seems a little shaky.
Well, but that's the law. It says there's different sovereigns and there's different prosecutions, so it's not double jeopardy. Although it's the same crime, but basically. But anyway, he's in jail. He's waiting the trial, and one of his defense lawyers, and I've talked to this man, he's the law professor at University of Missouri. He confirmed the story. This defense lawyer, the law professor, brings in to see Nichols a man named Michael Selby. And Selby had been, when John Ashcroft was the governor of Missouri, Selby had been his bodyguard. He was part of the Missouri State Trooper assigned on the governor's security. He'd since gone to law school, but anyway, he's out, and he shows up, and he said, "This is an off-the-books operation." He says to Nichols, the Department of Justice will have complete deniability if it ever comes out that I'm not working for them, but we'll guarantee, Attorney General Ashcroft can guarantee you will not get the death penalty if you cooperate with us. And Nichols says, "What do I have to do?" And Selby says, implicate your brother James in the bombing. And Nichols says, I won't do that. He wasn't. And Nichols said, but just out of curiosity, what are the other two things I have to do? He said, you have to take responsibility for a phone call we got at FBI headquarters 24 minutes before the bombing on April 19th, 1995. And Nichols says, what was the call about? He said, the caller said the Murrah Federal Building had just been blown up. Well, this is 24 minutes before it was blown up. And they couldn't get rid of that record of that call. They needed somebody to take responsibility for it. And he said, yeah, I'll say I did it. I didn't do it, but so what? And then they said, what's the last thing I need to do? And he said, Selby says, Roger Moore. And Nichols is a lady. He said, I'll give you Roger Moore. Moore's working for the government. Moore was involved in it. He says, no, we don't want Moore. Moore's protected. We want those remaining explosives that weren't used in the bombing because they'll have Moore's fingerprints on them, McVeigh's fingerprints on them, and a lot of them, and the ARA's fingerprints on them. He said, that's what we want. Of course, they ended up getting them and destroying them without doing the fingerprint testing on them.
Right. Now, I want to back up a little because this is going to lead in, just so everybody knows, I have Kathy Sanders I will be interviewing coming up. And this story right here of that phone call at 24 minutes is critical and what brought Kathy into the case. And I'll explain why I think this. The bomb squad was nearby on site that Wednesday morning. And the Oklahoma Police Department or City Police Department denied it, but there was witness after witness after witness of this occurring, that the bomb squad is there. Why would the bomb squad be there? Well, a phone call 24 minutes before saying that the place had blown up might inspire them to have the bomb squad there. It's just a thought. And they would have to explain that. So in order to back trace why they were there, they could use the phone call. And if they could get Terry Nichols to say that he made the phone call, then now it looks normal, right? It's not completely odd that the bomb squad happened to be on site. I'm curious if you agree with my theory on that as a possibility.
I do, but it's even uglier than that. Roger Charles, and I think Margaret may have written about this in a book, and I actually spoke to the father of one of these airmen. The FBI had a bomb disposal unit from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, ordered to Oklahoma City to check in on a motel by April 17th, 1995, a bomb disposal unit, and to remain there waiting further orders. Well, when the bomb goes off, the FBI knocks on the door and says, get the hell out of here. Go back to Nellis Air Force Base. Don't talk to anybody about this. And so I happen to know the father of one of these bomb guys. And we've been friends for years. And boy, that friendship went south in a hurry once I started questioning about that. But yes, they were there. They had been ordered there by the 17th. They appeared there by the 17th of April. Wait further orders, and then told to go home and keep quiet once the bomb went off. So no, they knew it was coming. And part of the things that makes Selby's story so interesting is this was after Nichols had written to, after Nichols had been tried in Oklahoma and found guilty, but again not given the death penalty because of others involved, and the jurors wanting, hopefully someday he'd say who they were. Nichols writes to John Ashcroft and says, come and see me. I'll tell you all about the bombing. I'll tell you all your people involved, what happened. Now, if I'm the Attorney General of the United States, I'm thinking, I get that letter, I'm thinking, this somebody may be telling the truth. And if so, I'm going to go talk to him. Or I would say, even if he's not telling the truth, I'm going to talk to him because I'd like to know what makes these people tick.
And it was a previous administration. It was the Clintons. He hated the Clintons, right? I mean, you would say, oh, hey, we could get something on these, some bitches from before, but one would think.
But no, in fact, he not only does not go see him, but he enters the order that from there forward, henceforth, no media. Nichols was to have no media contact, and that's what happened with Kathy.
Okay, let's back up and explain that real quick so people understand. Kathy Sanders, and I'll be again interviewing her, had set up an interview with Terry Nichols. She had built a relationship with him while investigating what happened to her grandchildren, and she was acting as a go-between 60 Minutes and Terry Nichols. Terry Nichols did not trust any reporter and would only be interviewed by Kathy Sanders. So she was hired on or given a temporary assignment as a acting journalist for CBS News and 60 Minutes. And the interview fell apart the day Ed Bradley died.
No, I think Bradley was live. Bradley was overseeing it. He was like in command of it. Kathy was the front person. They had that all set up. Bradley was keyed to go. They were sitting there waiting for Nichols to get on the phone, and then click. He's not going to be able to talk to you. They were good to go, and then they were not good to go. All of a sudden, they cut it off. And of course, Nichols has not had an opportunity to talk to the media since then. In fact, former Congressman Rohrabacher, Dana Rohrabacher from California, was part of the House Judiciary Committee or Oversight Committee. He went in specifically to talk to Nichols about the others involved. That fell through also because the FBI refused to let Rohrabacher speak with Nichols alone. They insisted upon having FBI agents in the room, taking down everything he said, and Nichols clammed up. He said, I'm not going to sit here and tell these guys what I know. And Rohrabacher was furious, but he couldn't do anything about it.
Wow. I imagine they said it was for his safety, right?
Yeah, well,
or something of the line.
National security.
Of course.
They play that card all the time.
And Rohrabacher was, I believe, in Justice Committee and had quite a clearance, I'm pretty sure. So I'm sure that he could have discerned what could be said or not said later on.
Except Nichols is he's so careful, so fearful about the others involved. I mean, and that's obvious because he believes, and I've since come to believe also, that the others involve the FBI. Their urine is all over the Oklahoma City bombing.
Tend to believe that the government are obviously bad guys. So, there's some bad maneuvering in this situation. But I'm not going to say that, Terry Nichols is a poster boy and a great guy himself. And Timothy McVeigh is a monster. And I think we need to always, it's important to acknowledge it. There are bad people all around in this. It's like everywhere you turn. But Terry Nichols, he seemed to be very protective about his travels, specifically with the Philippines. And I find it very remarkable. And you mentioned Dana Rohrabacher, I believe it was, who even wrote a memo about this, that what was Terry Nichols doing in the same place at the same time with Ramzi Youssef and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? And do you find that odd at all? And I believe he shut you down on that he would not, either you or Margaret, when you spoke with him, he would not discuss that any further.
That's
Do you have
true.
any thoughts?
That's true. I don't know. He insists there was nothing involving foreign elements in the bombing. He refused to talk about it, and
I feel very troubled by this more and more and more because, one, I believe he was found to have had gold bullion from his ex-wife, or somehow there's gold bullion and other things like that. I had a girlfriend many, many years ago, and one thing she talked about is all the gold in Saudi. Her father worked over there and stuff, and that she had like a gold ring and this and that, because gold is pretty common to get. And then you have Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, that's a definite Saudi connection there with bin Laden. And I can't help but wonder, perhaps the funding wasn't only the ARA. Is it possible that there could have been funding coming from travels to the Philippines?
It's possible, but one of the things that PATCON did, one of the objectives of PATCON was the money from all of these bank robberies. They would show up. A PATCON operative named Dave Rossi. He, unlike a lot of the operatives, he was a real FBI agent, undercover. That wasn't his real name. He would show up at these militia gatherings and hand out the money. And they were following the money. They wanted to go, here they're letting the ARA rob banks. I mean, coming in with automatic weapons, people could have been killed. I mean, they'd be terrified being robbed like that. They knew they were doing it. They were their people doing it because it was an affront. The FBI created the ARA, according to John Matthews. And the whole purpose was to follow the money. And so that eventually they would know where all these groups were all over the country, and then they could take them all down at once. They were the same thing in Arizona. That, according to Matthews, the Lone Wolf gun store where they were selling the automatic weapons, they sold thousands of automatic weapons to biker gangs, bringing in drugs from China hidden in the gas tanks of tractors. And they did it because they following the money. We want to know where these drugs are going. We want to know, and Matthews said too, they wanted an incident. They figured that if they sold these guns to the biker gangs, and sooner or later they'd get in a big shootout, and that would alarm the American people. And of course, that did happen. It happened, 2015 or so in Texas, where the two biker gangs shot it out in the parking lot. We're using those weapons, but it was always follow the money, and we'll eventually get them all, identify and get them all.
And that operation, the later one you're talking about, was called Fast and Furious.
Yes.
And instead of follow the money, that was follow the guns. But coincidentally, the person working that was Eric Holder. And Eric Holder previously is tied to Oklahoma City bombing, correct?
Correct. And Holder set up, that operation originally was set up in 1995 under Holder. And so when Holder appears before Congress in 2012, 2013, raises his right hand and says, I didn't have an idea this was going on. This took me by surprise. Who could have imagined that the United States, these rogue agents, would be selling the guns, having a gun store sell automatic weapons and hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition to these bad guys. Never in the wildest dreams could I have imagined that. Well, hell, it helped set it up in 95. So it was set up when he was the Deputy Attorney General.
Can we pause for a second on that too, and look at some of these people, because there were some very real names who were involved in the situation. Eric Holder wound up becoming the Attorney General under Obama. You have also this other guy, Merrick Garland.
It's a funny name, isn't it?
Yeah, wound up becoming a nominee under Obama for the Supreme Court. Didn't get that job, but he did get some spoils and became Attorney General himself under Joe Biden.
Richard Roberts,
who wound up becoming a senior judge himself. And he had kind of a sketchy background where I guess he had some issues with a 16-year-old way back in the day.
And he oversaw the grand jury that supposedly investigated my brother's murder. And then after that grand jury comes back, no bill, no cause of action, no murder. He mysteriously ends up on the, well, not mysteriously, he's just appointed to the District of Columbia federal bench, and then more or less forced to resign or take a medical retirement because of the scandal involving a 16-year-old girl. But Eileen Meyer, I think that went on to become head of the IRS. I mean, everybody linked to my brother's case in the bombing went on to great things, and the Clinton and future administrations.
At least in the DOJ. Now, there were a couple people who it appears may have been on the up and up because they got froze out. Danny Coulson.
Yes.
Was put on ice, I believe, for almost a decade and then just quietly retired.
He was the FBI agent who wanted the grand jury open to investigate the bombing, and they put it. They showed him the back door.
And
FBI
Bob
agent.
Ricks as well.
Yes.
So it appears there were a couple good guys in there trying to at least investigate. I mean, wanting a grand jury seems perfectly reasonable.
They're not all bad. I mean, they're truly not all bad. But when you get up to the level of the director and the associate director and those permanent party guys, it's like I've told people for years, the only difference between those people and the FBI and the KGB is that the KGB never claimed to be a legitimate law enforcement agency. They do the same thing the KGB does. They kill people, they destroy evidence, they prosecute innocent people, all under the banner of being a legitimate law enforcement agency.
This was inspired by this tremendous book, Blowback, by Margaret Roberts. Now, there's a link to this book in the description, and I really encourage you to check it out if you want to learn more of what inspired me to take this on. And I also wanted to tell you that not only have I had Margaret on and Jesse on now for a second time, I'm interviewing other players as I can find them in this vastly important story about the Oklahoma City bombing. I'm interviewing Kathy Sanders, who lost her 2 grandchildren in the bombing and became an incredibly important investigator on her own. I also am talking with Terrence Yakee's widow. He was a deputy who died under extremely mysterious circumstances. And I'm interviewing Ken Silva about PATCON. That's Patriot Conspiracy. Now, all of these stories are tying in with Oklahoma City, and I hope you consider subscribing and catching them as they come out. You spoke with Terry Nichols, and I think you videotaped that deposition. Can we watch it?
No, I had an order from a federal judge that wanted Nichols to give a videotape deposition and tell the American people what happened, and the FBI was able to get the 10th Circuit to reverse it, so he could not give that deposition. The two, you asked about FOIA suits. I have 2 FOIA suits going on now, FOIA lawsuits against the Department of Justice and the FBI. The first one is for a videotape, a surveillance videotape. Their own records say, the FBI records say, show the bomb detonating 3 minutes and 6 seconds after the suspects exit the vehicle. Well, they're not supposed to be suspects. There was only supposed to be McVeigh in that vehicle, according to the FBI. I believe that other person or persons are their informants. Now, if you have that videotape, that would have been Exhibit 1 in McVeigh's criminal prosecution.
Where was it written that it says suspects? I mean, how did you get that
It's in their
information?
records. It is in one of the records. I can't remember how I came across it, or Roger came across it. So the surveillance video shows, and I also have records where one of their agents or 2 of their agents are trying to sell a copy of that tape in 1996 to NBC Dateline for $1 million. So
Was it a Secret Service agent that had annotated the?
It was meetings between the Secret Service they did a timeline on the whole from the day the bomb went off, second it went off, and every day added to it. And this was the conversations between FBI and Secret Service in they didn't have a Zoom call in, or maybe it was a conference call or a meeting where they discuss it in the meeting. They have that tape. And I have records where an agent or agents are trying to sell a copy of it. I sued to get that tape in 2008. And I asked for that tape, and then I said, I tracked McVeigh's route to the bombing. And every place there was an external camera on every building. I asked for those tapes too. Well, they don't give you the tape of the Murrow building, which that bombing tape was probably from. They say they can't find it. They give me tapes for these other 26 tapes from these other buildings, but as strangely enough, as the truck passes that particular camera, it goes blank and then comes back on. And it, camera after camera, the truck approaches.
And all the other cameras.
Well, separate cameras, boom, 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 boom. Of course, they say, damn, that's unfortunate. It must have been the tape was recycling or the camera broke, but
At every different business, they somehow. Why don't they just say that the truck had EMP and it knocked it out as it drove by? Because that's as likely of a claim as they happen to all cycle.
but the point being, that case is still ongoing. I mean, 2008, and it's still active, the fight. I have another one that's been going on since about 2015, and that's when I discovered they have 67,000 records showing that Roger Moore was an informant embedded with the ARA and McVeigh. And that case is, they said we have 60,000 pages, but you can't have them.
Now, this brings in Andreas Strassmeir, correct?
Yes.
The CIA specifically part FOIA. You're looking for information tying
Strassmeir.
Andreas Strassmeir to it, along with Roger Moore. I'm guessing. What can you tell me? Because I know you're under a gag order for some stuff, so I don't want to push boundaries. What can you tell me about that? The 2010 ruling and the 52 documents, satellite images, and whatever else.
Correct a misstatement I made earlier when I said there's no foreign involvement. I've not seen Middle Eastern involvement, but there's all kinds of involvement coming out of Germany. Strassmeir was a German intelligence officer who supposedly comes over here and joins the neo-Nazi white supremacist folks at Elohim City. Yet his father was high up in the German government. He would vacation in Israel on kibbutzes with his Jewish girlfriend, and he's a neo-Nazi? Not likely. He is apparently, Roger Charles found out, was a CIA operative on loan to the FBI. He was, according to an ATF informant, Carol Howe, he in the ARA, and I think he was McVeigh, went to Oklahoma City in October of 1994 to scout the target, the Merrill building that they're going to blow up in April. And because that would coincide with the date of Waco in April 19th. She tells the ATF about it. They don't do anything. They have, FBI had an informant named Sean Kinney with the ARA. They all know it's coming. And Matthews tells me that on the run up to the bombing in Oklahoma City, the FBI had 3 operations they were involved with to blow up federal buildings with a truck bomb. They shut down 2 and let Oklahoma City go forward. But Strassmeir is all over these things. And interestingly, when the bombing takes place, Strassmeir goes to North Carolina immediately and is then smuggled out of the country by the CIA back to Germany before anyone can interview it. And he gets interviewed with a phone call from the FBI, and they said, "Hello, Mr. Strassmeir, did you have anything to do with Oklahoma City bombing?" "No, sir. Thank you. It's good enough for us." Click.
He pops up from time to time. Like I'm interviewing Ken Silva, who actually got an interview with Andreas.
Yes.
Strassmeir.
Yes.
John Ronson has done some friendly interviews with Andreas Strassmeir.
I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with Ken's, but not the other ones. But Strassmeir is as nervous as a cat in a round room.
Now Strassmeir also, if I recall, didn't Timothy McVeigh, they proved through a phone card, call Elohim City looking for the German, aka Andreas Strassmeir, and I believe wasn't Strassmeir also at a strip club where Timothy McVeigh told a stripper that April 19th you're going to remember for the rest of your life or something like that. There's security footage of this.
Yes, and they appear to, from what I've seen in terms of the informant documents and things, they appear to have been friends. Matthews monitored them, McVeigh and Strassmeir, in a militia training facility in San Saba, Texas. Before the bombing, he was watching them getting their training together down there in this militia encampment. No, they had a relationship far greater than the FBI would want anyone to believe. They want them to believe they're just like ships passing in the night and did not know each other. Well, that's apparently not true. Well, to me, it's pretty clear that wasn't true.
Wow. Now, to wrap up where we are at this point with the both FOIA cases you have, one is ongoing, as you said. I mean,
Both are.
Okay, both are ongoing. Now, one has a gag order. Is it just on ice? What does that mean?
It's John Matthews was going to be my last witness. That the FOIA case for the videotapes. It's my understanding this is the only case that has ever gone to trial in a FOIA case. The government always wins them. They come in and say under oath, well, there are no documents. Well, this was a case where I'd been leaked the documents, so the judge didn't believe them. And that's why it went to trial. But they'd come under oath and say there are no documents, no tapes. And of course you lose because you can't prove it, the output. But this case went to trial in July of 2014. John Matthews had, when I started to get my PATCON documents from the government, I would put them out on the internet for two reasons: for my own protection, that they're out there, and to so people would know, hopefully, what was happening. Well, in 2011, I get a phone call from a guy who introduced himself as John Matthews. And he says to me, Jesse, says, you got all the pieces, but you haven't put it together. I said, what do you mean? He said, PATCON. He said, I'll come over and tell you about it. So he shows up. He was a veteran of the 3rd Marine Division. I was too, and so was Roger Charles. And he said, PATCON, he said, I was one of their top undercover operatives in PATCON in the 1990s. And he even had a plaque when he retired from the FBI saying, for in appreciation to risking his life in the fight against domestic terrorism as part of PATCON, John Matthews, thank you. But he said, I was one of the few people who went into these operations because I believed they were necessary. He said, I love my country. I thought these groups I was supposed to infiltrate and monitor were dangerous, and I was going to do it. He said, most people, however, who go undercover are caught committing a crime and forced to do it because they're going to be prosecuted. He said, that wasn't me. He said, I went there as a patriot to do this. He said, I started this operation being told that my job was to infiltrate and report, to monitor, report. He said, but that was a lie. He said, the real objective was to infiltrate and incite the violence. And he told me about the stuff they had done. They had plan an operation to damage the cooling system at the Browns Ferry nuclear plant in Alabama, but another Fukushima, selling Stinger missiles, machine guns, drugs, I mean, everything, robbing banks, armored cars. And he said, I said, well, what can I do for you, John? He said, I like the story told. And I said, okay, I can't do it, but John Solomon's a friend of mine. He's the editor of Newsweek. He had just been retired from the bureau chief of the Associated Press in Washington, D.C. And so I get a hold of John. I said, John Solomon, that is. I said, this story's incredible. And John, he assigns a young reporter to it. They spend months verifying everything Matthews had to say. And then the story's supposed to run the last Monday in November of 2011. And I get a call from the reporter the week before who had been assigned to write it. He won't give me a copy of the story, but he just reads it to me. It's going to be like 12 pages of Newsweek. Matthews' picture on the cover. He's got the gun running. He's got the drug running. He's got the selling Stinger missiles, blowing up the Browns Ferry nuclear plant, robbing banks, robbing armored cars. It's all packed. That's there. Over the weekend, I found out later that the Obama administration sent some folks to talk to the leadership of Newsweek, and they killed the story. They gutted the story. They took out of it all the ugliness, all the PATCON ugliness, and instead left the big picture of John Matthews on the cover saying, this guy's a hero. He infiltrated all these groups. And of course, those groups are still out there. So Matthews is furious. He said, they just got me killed. He said, I was willing to take the risk of retribution, but only if the story was told. Said they didn't tell my story. They just singled me out. And that was in 2011. Meanwhile, my FOIA case is going to trial in 2014 over the videotapes. And I say to John, John, I'll give you a chance. I said, I won't force you to do it. I won't subpoena you to do it. But you can be my last witness, and you can tell them all from that witness stand, you have complete immunity, and you can tell that federal judge and that courtroom people exactly what the government did with PATCON. He said, hell yes. Well, he's going to be my last witness on July the 31st, 2014. He doesn't show up. I find out later, he said he'd been found by the visit from the FBI, basically, and they told him he better have a terminal case of the I don't remembers. And he better not show up. Or if he did, he better not remember anything. Well, interesting enough, we were so fearful for John's safety that I was able to obtain an order before the trial that Matthews could testify from an undisclosed location, virtually, and the FBI was not even to know where it was. I mean, he was just going to be out there. They don't know where he is, but of course, as John says, they can find you anywhere. And so the judge immediately, the trial's over. He's never ruled on the videotape yet. He appointed the special master to investigate the witness tampering by the threats to Matthews. That's what's sealed. And that has been ongoing since 2015.
So did you rest your case at this point? Or?
Yes, no, the judge says the case was rested, but he said, my decision will be influenced by the results of this. These are obviously influenced perhaps by the results of this witness tampering. If they threaten the witness, that to me, that means he didn't come out and say that. That's obviously.
So if 11 years and change later, it's still being investigated?
Well, it's hard fought. I mean, when you're dealing with the FBI, especially out of the main justice, I mean, these are not particularly honest people. And when all of the witnesses are the FBI,
well, I mean, that's scary. Are you working with any other attorneys who?
I'm not allowed to.
Oh, well, that's coincidental. So it's almost like if enough time goes by, they won't have to worry.
That's right. They have a gaggle of main justice lawyers on the other side. It's just me because it's sealed. Nobody can see the evidence but me.
Wow.
My staff, I can't have associates or paralegals or anybody like that help me. It's just me, and that's fine. But, it's not a fair fight, but if they wanted a fair fight, they should have killed somebody else's brother.
Wow. You are doing yeoman's work, and I just pray that there can be some kind of breakthrough. It's hard for me to really think so with the current situation and administration. I'm not all that impressed with Pam Bondi. I feel like she could be a bit better on some things. So I don't know if much is going to come out of that group. I can only hope that judge, I mean, I hope he doesn't retire. I mean, at some point, they've got to make a determination here. I mean, this is the longest verdict I've ever heard of in history.
No, I'm fortunate to have good judges. I mean, as I said, it's a hard fight when all the witnesses are bad guys, basically. It's I shouldn't say they're big. They're on the other side, and well, as I said, so many of especially the higher levels in the FBI would lie when the truth would serve the Bureau better. So,
wow, this is so shocking. I'm going to wrap up today, and thank you again so much, Jesse. I think next time, hopefully, we'll pick up with what you have found more on Elohim City. Carol Howe will probably come into the mix. There's just so much.
One of the things we need to talk about on PATCON too is their sensitive informant program and the control of the media. That they had an informant that had ABC News, and that's why Roger Story was killed.
As a matter of fact, don't you have a training manual of how to?
They have. Well, they won't give it to me. I sued them, and I said, I want are the manuals that shows how you embed informants on the staffs of jail judges, in the media, in religious organizations, Congress, the White House, even on the teams, defense teams in high-profile criminal cases. They had informed on McVeigh's team. Now, I thought they'd come back and say, well, there's no such documents because that would be illegal. And why we would never do that. Well, some bitches come back and say, we do that. We got manuals on how to do it, but you can't have them, national security. And so,
Wow. The deeper this rabbit hole gets, the scarier it is. But yes, we will definitely have to explore that. The manuals, there's just so many crazy loose ends. Another subject I'd like to cover with you is the Southern Poverty Law Center and why are they mixed up in everything? Again, next time. What is this private organization doing, working in concert with law enforcement? So,
well,
Jesse,
I look forward to discussing those with you.
thank you so much.
I just hope I'm around to do so. But I do have my wife start the car in the morning, so